Let's talk about trolls for a moment here. Have you ever seen a troll come up to you and say, "Hey, where are your peer-reviewed journals that prove the Earth is flat?" Well, I've got a really burnt pancake here. And if I were to see someone try to eat that, I would say, "Hey, don't eat that. That thing is burnt." Then they could say, "Well, do you have any peer-reviewed papers that prove this pancake is burnt?" No? Well, all right then. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go eat my pancake. Bon appetit, dude. Bon appetit. Now, concerning the trolliest of the globe Earth trolls, they have two major ideals that they cling to. Number one is that they have 100% proof that the Earth is a globe. They believe that the globe Earth is a proven fact, which is why they think all flat earthers are incredibly stupid. And the second ideal that they cling to is if mainstream science says it, unless you're an expert, you shouldn't argue with them, because mainstream science is the best information available. And in order to become an expert, you have to go to an accredited school to get a degree to prove it. And did you ever notice how graduates wear those black robes and funny hats? Did you know those hats are specifically called mortar boards and are directly tied to masonry? The entire graduation ceremony is a Masonic ritual, where they give you a certificate representing a kind of authority. Unless you have been granted this kind of Masonic authority, you're out of the club and are disqualified from being considered an expert. Just something to think about. Another something to think about is this Albert Einstein quote Mr. Sensible gave me. According to Mr. Sensible, Einstein said, "No amount of experimentation can ever prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong." That is something someone would say if they were really certain that they were wrong. And on that note, here's a peer-reviewed journal article from the Journal of College Science Teaching, entitled, "A Gentle Reminder That a Hypothesis is Never Proven Correct, Nor is a Theory Ever Proven to be True," by Jacqueline McLaughlin. The entire article is a declaration that science never proves anything. Now, when I first saw this, I looked at the name and thought, is this a joke? Or is this for real? Is Jacqueline McLaughlin a pseudonym for someone laughing at you? But no, it's for real. It says here that McLaughlin is an assistant professor of biology at Pennsylvania State University. And this can be verified by looking for her at the Pennsylvania State University website. Oh, but maybe this is just an opinion piece. Just because one expert says something doesn't mean it is a consensus. That claim doesn't quite work when she would have to get approvals by an entire committee of peers in order to get it published in a peer-reviewed journal. And it isn't just her saying that. Psychology Today directly claims that there is no such thing as scientific proof. Haverford College says the same thing. There is no such thing as proof in science, only scientific evidence. Scientific American says, if you say science is right, you're wrong. And Forbes magazine says scientific proof is a myth. So this is very much a mainstream claim. Now remember those two ideals that the globe Earth trolls tend to cling to? Here they contradict each other. Since mainstream science claims there's no such thing as scientific proof. So a sacrifice has to be made. If they go one way, we can jump them, and if they go the other way, we can jump them. The question is, which ideal are the anti-flat earthers going to sacrifice? Let's ask Mr. Sensible. He's an anti-flat earther.
Well, to summarise, the globe would appear to be the best explanation for the observations we've got and for the tests we've made, but there's always the possibility that a better explanation could come up.
There is no proof of a globe, and on your terms.
Scientifically, there's no proof of anything.
Alright, so he agrees with Dr. McLaughlin and admits that there is no proof that the Earth is a globe. Also, by agreeing with Dr. McLaughlin, he has just discredited every single definitive claim he has ever made or will ever make. So for as long as he holds to that standard, we should not expect to see him in any debates ever again, since definitive statements are kind of a requirement in a debate. But as we know, anti-flat earthers tend to love their definitive claims, and they tend to love making omniscient claims, speaking on behalf of all flat earthers everywhere, even though they have no ability to account for all flat earthers everywhere whatsoever. Mr. Sensible isn't as bad as Professor Dave or MC Toon, but he is still an anti-flat earther. So we'll see how long this lasts before he decides to throw Dr. McLaughlin under the bus. And that is just reading the headline of the article here. But if we actually start to read the article itself, there is so much more. I've got a link to this in this video's description. But the first paragraph here speaks of Donald French, the president of the Society of College Science Teachers, and how he wants to put a disclaimer sticker on science textbooks saying these teachings are not absolute. Don't take this as doctrine. These teachings are unproven theories. Directly quoting it, it says, "We teachers, therefore, have created a huge misconception for students and non-scientists who read and use textbooks. They have come to believe that science is absolute and not open to challenge." And I think that's a huge reason right there why there are so many anti-flat earth trolls out there. Overall, the entire first paragraph greatly supports my whole adventure in our Modern Earth Science Destroyed series, where we go through a typical high school earth science textbook and point out how many unsupported claims they make, saying, "This is so because we said so." I refer to these as academic pitfalls, where the textbooks make definitive statements that look like solid ground, but they have no proof backing them up whatsoever. That's Team Rocket for you. The second section here gets all into the dictionary, speaking my language, and says a scientific theory does not have any proof, but it does have lots of experimental evidence. And my goodness, does she just cite Wikipedia there? My college English professors would not approve. But anyway, evidence as defined by the dictionary is proof. Something can't tend to prove something if it never proves anything. To be fair though, there are multiple definitions here, an indication or sign being one of them. My daughter's head felt warm, which was evidence that she might have a fever. There is uncertainty in that though, for she might not have a fever. Perhaps my hands were just cold. This renders all of the evidence behind scientific theories as being indications that provide a reason to speculate that something might be the case. I like this part. Colleagues, it is time to bring honor and dignity back to the history of scientific investigation that has prevailed for centuries. We must act and work together as professional educators to correct the misconceptions that a theory is a hunch, and that science is absolute. As Dr. French pointed out, one way is to have a disclaimer in our textbooks that would make the underpinnings of science explicit, that our explanations are tentative and open to challenge, that what's in our textbooks just happens to be the best theories thus far, and that science is a process. Another way is this: listen to our students and non-scientist community and gently remind them to be careful with their words. This step also requires that we become more cautious with our own words by using the appropriate words when we speak about research in a public forum. In other words, this is saying, don't make definitive statements. We can correct the misconceptions that science is a done deal and that a theory is a hunch. I disagree with her about the hunch part here because so long as a theory has no proof to back it up, it's still a hunch. But I think the rest of that was really good. I hope you'll agree with me, though, that this next part is really, really terrible. So what are the words that we need to keep in mind? The hardest part about understanding scientific theories and hypotheses seems to be this: a hypothesis is never proven correct, nor is a theory ever proven to be true. Words like prove, correct, and true should be removed from our vocabulary completely and immediately. Just what goes through your mind when you hear that? I can't help but think of this.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Words like prove, correct, and true should be removed from our vocabulary completely and immediately. It is for this reason that I refer to McLaughlin's article, as well as these other articles, as the Articles of Ignorance, since they don't claim to know anything that is correct or true. These articles of ignorance are a direct rejection of all foundations anywhere and everywhere, and are direct encouragement to not anchor oneself to anything, but rather to allow oneself to be tossed as chaff to and fro by the wind of every passing fad and new idea. I hope that rings a bell for you. Let's look at James 1:6. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Ephesians 4:14, that we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, and carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. Helaman 5:12, when the devil shall send forth his mighty winds, yea, his shafts in the whirlwind, yea, when all his hail and his mighty storm shall beat upon you, it shall have no power over you, to drag you down to the gulf of misery and endless woe, because of the rock upon which ye are built, which is a sure foundation, a foundation whereon if men build, they cannot fall. If you want to stand for truth and righteousness, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that things can be proven, and that it is possible to know that something is true and correct. When you disavow words like prove, correct, and true, you open yourself up to the point that they can tell you anything, and you are left to acknowledge it as a possibility. And then they are able to entice you into believing that that is probably true. I quoted these scriptural passages to show you that this is nothing new, but this is part of a war that has been going on for thousands of years. Now, one person recently told me that to agree with these articles is to agree that there is more to learn. And I admit, that sounds really nice. But let's have a look at the definition of the word learn. To acquire knowledge of or skill in by study, instruction, or experience. We can't learn anything if we never acquire any knowledge. Knowledge is an acquaintance with facts, truths, or principles as from study or investigation. As I said, the scientists who believe science never proves anything are admitting they do not perceive or understand any facts or truths and thereby claim to know nothing. Now let's have a look at the definition of faith. Faith is a belief that is not based on proof. Therefore, according to Dr. McLaughlin over there, all of science is 100% faith-based. Now, I don't want to treat the word faith like a dirty word. It isn't. But I do not believe all of humanity is doomed to forever remain in a state of faith. Faith is meant to grow into knowledge, and if it doesn't grow, we should let it go. Now let's take a look at the word science and where it comes from. The word science comes from the Latin scientia, which means knowledge or to know stuff. So when you claim science never proves anything, and that you don't know anything, that isn't science. That is the opposite of science. So please, acknowledge that Dr. McLaughlin is wrong. Dare to disagree with so-called mainstream science, and disavow the articles of ignorance. So, how do you go about improving things? Well, I like to start off with the most basic of observations and build on those. Observations like cats eating food. By observing cats eating food, I can prove that some cats eat food. Okay, cats eat food. What you're telling me right now is that it is impossible for science to prove that cats eat food. That's utterly impossible. That's what this peer-reviewed journal is saying. That's what the consensus is saying. That's what I've got. Forbes magazine, Scientific American, all these other people that I pointed out, they're all saying science never proves anything. So
that's correct. That's correct. So
it's impossible to prove that cats eat food.
Right. So with your cat example, if you were running that as a scientific experiment and you've only got the one cat, how would you do it? Would you just put the cat in a room with some food and see if the food disappears?
That's one option. There's a lot of different ways.
And perhaps you got a camera pointing on them as well, and perhaps you got someone looking in the window to see if the cat chews up the food and the food disappears. Okay. Right, so you've had an idea.
Watching the food go into its mouth, I could put a camera in the food. Okay. There's different ways to do it.
Okay, so you've got this observation. Hey, food's disappearing, and I've got a cat. I think cats eat food. So you run your scientific test. You put the cat in the room with a bowl of food. You've got someone watching through a window. You've got a camera. Etc. And you go and check it every 24 hours, and then suddenly find that the food is gone. And your person who's watching said, "Oh, I saw the cat shove his face in the bowl, and when he lifted his face out, the bowl was empty." The camera shows the same. You look at the bowl, and the bowl is empty. Okay, and you look at the cat, and the cat's licking his lips and has breath that smells of tuna or whatever the hell it is. So you now have. Well, I was going to say, you now have some massive evidence saying cats eat food. All that evidence.
You can even open up its stomach and find the food in its stomach.
Yes, it's getting a bit icky now, but you could do that. Right. So, you have at least 4 and maybe 5, if you cut your cat open, bits of evidence that say cats eat food. So your hypothesis is looking pretty good. Your test did not throw out your hypothesis. Now,
You're claiming I can't prove it? That's not proven? If I can find the food in its stomach?
I'm saying that your hypothesis that cats eat food looks good. It looks good, doesn't it? Because all the things you saw with your experiment, all the tests appear to evidence that that cat has eaten the food. So that is really good. That's a strong hypothesis, and maybe we could come up with some other hypothesis that we could test that could make it strong enough into being a theory that cats eat food. However, I'm from the 25th century, and I can tell you, I've just been back from the 25th century, and I can tell you that cats actually place their faces above food, and the food gets transported into their mouths and then their stomachs. Now, okay, this is silly, I know, but possibly that could happen. There is another explanation that you and I haven't thought of. However, I would say, Kyle, that your cat food hypothesis, with all the testing we've done, looks pretty damn good, and we could even call it the theory of cat eating. And that's really good. So that will now be the current state of science, because no one has shown that you are wrong, Kyle, right now. Nobody has shown you are wrong. So that is the current theory. It's the best explanation. We have bowls of food, and we've got happy cats, and then empty bowls of food, and the cats are still alive. Everything points to the fact that cat eats food, and that's great. Now, scientifically, you'd have to be open to there being another explanation. An invisible doodah came in and stole the food while you weren't looking. Now, it's not likely. There's no evidence for that. And maybe if someone could provide evidence of that happening, then we'd have to throw out your cat food idea. But right now, that's now been upgraded, Kyle. That is now a theory. But it could still be wrong. That would be scientific.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, by the way,
you're just going around, beating around the bush, telling me that you don't believe it's proven that cats eat food. That's really what it boils down to.
Well,
it's not proven. It's not a fact. It's just.
It is a fact.
Theory.
Okay.
A fact is something that actually exists. Reality, truth. Therefore, it can be considered one of Dr. McLaughlin's forbidden words. By using the word fact, Mr. Sensible is directly disagreeing with Dr. McLaughlin. However, he won't acknowledge it. Also, keep in mind, The definition of the word proof is evidence sufficient to establish a thing as true, or produce a belief in its truth.
Turing Test 2, thank you Turing Test, member for 25 months, posts his free message saying scientific ideas can be falsified but not proven. So as I said, if I had a special X-ray machine which saw in a different wavelength, and while that cat's face is just placed over the bowl with someone watching and a camera watching, an invisible doodah did come in, swiped the bowl and replaced it with an empty bowl, and rammed the food down your cat's throat really, really quickly. I've now got that using my super duper X-ray machine. That's the explanation. That is now a better idea than yours. We can see it happening. So possibly your idea, I mean, I know we're talking with silly examples here, Kyle.
So to take into one's mouth, to swallow for nourishment, chew and swallow food, that's the definition of eating. So if it's going into its stomach,
yeah, well,
if it's chewing on it, that's all eating.
I've tried to go with your cat example. I mean, perhaps there's other ideas which I can't think of, which may be a better way to go through this. But my point is,
now, I understand there's a lot more complicated matters out there.
Yeah, and we want something simple.
Concepts, and they're a lot harder to prove, but I'm going with the very basic, the very, very basic, cats eat food.
Yeah, and as I said, that was a reasonable explanation for suddenly finding empty cat bowls in that room. You come up with a thought, hey, cats eat the food. We come up with a test. We have tested this hypothesis, and found that all the evidence appears to support your hypothesis that cats eat food. There is nothing to the contrary of that. No one has shown the invisible doodah. No one has shown a time traveller coming and transporting the food into the cat's stomach. Everything looks good. You've got a great hypothesis, Kyle. Cats eat food. We're going with that as a theory. Unless there's a better explanation comes along. I can't think of one.
You don't believe it's proven?
It's not proven, because possibly someone could come up with a better theory. Well, we got an observation, we come up with an explanation, and developed a hypothesis and made a prediction, generated an experiment to test that prediction, and found that your prediction was correct.
And there he goes, using another one of Dr. McLaughlin's taboo words, correct. So he appears to disagree with her, even though he does not acknowledge it.
So, it's the best explanation. It's the best explanation.
It can be
That's
correct,
great.
but it's not proven correct.
Yes. It may be the one, the only explanation that will ever be put forward and evidenced to explain these bowls of cat food disappearing. You know, it may be that your idea will never ever be overturned, but it will never be proven. It will always be the theory of cat food eating, the very best explanation. Same with evolution, same with gravity.
I should never ever be offended when someone says that there's no proof of a flat earth, because they don't believe that there's proof for anything.
That's true. That's true. If you came up with a whole load of photos and an explanation for sunsets and eclipses and all the other things that us guys berate you guys about, if you came up with explanations for all of that were better explanations than the globe, then what could happen is we say, do you know what? We'll have to throw out the globe. You've got a better explanation, and flat Earth theory is at that point the best explanation. It becomes the theory, but it could be overturned by something better.
The difference between a good explanation and a bad explanation for me is the amount of proof behind it. And so what I look for is those basic concepts, the building blocks of concepts like cats eat food. Flat Earthers and Globe Earthers alike, please dare to disagree with so-called mainstream science, and stand with me in denouncing the articles of ignorance. This message has been brought to you by the Flat Earth Institute of Science. Thank you all for watching.